Welcome back. Now, the One South African movement says politicians have stolen billions without consequence, and because of this, they should pay back by funding the COVID-19 vaccine procurement. The movement is against any tax increases to fund the purchase and rollout of the vaccine. And chief activist Mmusi Maimane talks to us now from Johannesburg. Mr. Maimane, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. I mean, before we get into our topic for the day, it's my first time talking to you since the announcement of, the untimely passing of the late minister in the presidency, Mr. Jackson Mthembu. I know that you spoke to my colleague yesterday, but I'd like to offer you just an opportunity once more to convey your condolences.
Look, I think it doesn't matter how long the time passes from you finding out, the shock doesn't seem to subside, because Jackson Mthembu was to be fair, he was a true statesman in the right sense of the word. He was an honorable member. I felt that he was an individual we could work together. And like I said, I think South Africa has lost an ally in building the project of a prosperous South Africa. So truly, I want to send my deep condolences to his family again. It's been traumatic. It's been traumatic for them Mthembus. It's been a number of years of absolute devastation. And I think death be not proud as this time. And also my condolences to his political party, the cabinet, and the president personally.
Sure. And I mean, he was, one of the ministers at the forefront of updating continuously with regards to the national state of disaster, but as well as, what plans government had. And we're talking about this, you and I, today, because he seemed to be in disagreements when it comes to at least the tax hike, proposal by National Treasury. Let's start with that. Where are your concerns there, Mr. Maimane?
Look, I think COVID has devastated South Africa, both in terms of the lives of people who have been lost and certainly the economy, that is. And so I think South Africans are in a very difficult space as we sit right now. And I think for the government to impose an additional tax is a bit like asking your children who have been absolutely traumatized to do more than what they can. I think a solidarity tax to fund a vaccine actually is an insult to the people of this country. I think politicians who managed to squander 500 billion rands in the PPE tax, politicians who it seems like their livelihoods have not been affected in the sense that they've still been on full salary, that the VIP security that has been given, that ultimately even issues such as the cabinet size remains intact. It would seem government strategy is to say, you are the ones who must be responsible for your own safekeeping during COVID, which is correct, but you also, in this instance, must be the ones responsible for paying for what government ought to be doing. And I think that is an insult to the people of this country. And I think in this time, when we say we must all pull together, yes, citizens must do all the health protocols, but government should do its part. We can't ask citizens to fund a vaccine. I think politicians should do it.
Right. And by politicians doing it, you're proposing a 10% monthly, subsidy from, politicians in a sense that they need to contribute this percentage. We're talking here ministers, deputy ministers and DGs.
Correct. I think that Cabinet must take a collective responsibility here, because also this whole discussion about the vaccine is not a fresh discussion. If you do any studies in virology, you could have forecast the fact that come January, a vaccine would potentially be available and we needed to roll one out. And so you cannot penalize people only for being corrupt. You must also penalize them for being incompetent. And I think there's been incompetent planning in this particular instance. And it's not a time, as all of us as South Africans, we cannot afford such slip-ups. We cannot afford. Lives are being lost. So my call still today, I say, tax the politicians. Let's make sure they're the ones who are paying. And once we know that, then I think citizens will even more cooperative in other aspects. But I think to leave it simply to say it's up to the hands of people, they must pay for it, I think is wrong. And it will be a robbing of poor South Africans in this country who are desperate for many of them to get this vaccine.
Mr. Maimane, where do you think government got it wrong, just in terms of this vaccine rollout? We've been appealing for, more transparency, more clarity when Pfizer, leaked information that they had tried to engage with government months and months before. It seemed government didn't have the sense of urgency that it looks like they have when they talk to South Africans. Where do you think they got it wrong?
I think it was the poor, misuse of financing in terms of the initial 500 billion rands. There should have been foresight in the belief that inherently some of the money should have been reserved for the use of vaccines. So the planning on that score was incorrect. Secondly, I think that the government certainly did not invest a sufficient learnings from the first lockdown. So when we went into, we should have actually had a public-private partnership that sat around and said, we're going into the next phase of the virus. How do we effectively plan in terms of rolling out vaccines, considering other candidate treatments like ivermectin or whatever the other treatments are available, considering them seriously, but also being able to say, when we do a rollout, this is how we're going to effectively do it, where some citizens can procure it this way, others that way. But the absence of planning is an indicator of a government that simply fell asleep at the wheel and ignored the fact that these dates would be coming. But lastly, I think all of us should be very conscious of the fact that we have a government that is fast heading towards a fiscal cliff. It has run out of money. It has misspent money. And now it seems like collectively all of these things are now coming. You know, we all save for an emergency. And when you start to eat into your savings through projects that are like a wasteful expenditure, when it matters the most, such as a time such as this one, on this rainy day, the government has failed to protect its own people.
South African movements, Mmusi Maimane, good to talk to you. Thank you for your time.